want to start off because how could we not start off with a few words about Eretz Yisrael? Not only to strengthen you, to strengthen myself. It is heartbreaking. Every morning I run to the news to see what happened in Israel. And what's heartbreaking is to see how Israel, we are become the face of anti-Semitism. All behind this whole facade is downright blatant anti-Semitism. And the question is, what is our reaction to what's going on? So let's do the Jewish reaction. We must increase in our Judaism. We must become stronger and better Jews in Torah and mitzvahs in unity, and show our support for Eretz Yisrael. No Jew should be saying, you're right, it's terrible what's happening to the Palestinians. We have to stand united with Israel. Now, I mentioned to you a few times, history is not my forte. I just listened to my brother was on a radio show, and he's brilliant in history and facts. He could debate anybody. In a second, he has 900 facts. So I jotted down a few facts because we need a few true facts to fight the lies and the misinformation of what's being said out there. First of all, we don't need Joan Rivers to tell us they started it. They started the Yom Kippur War. They started the Six-Day War. Yeah. They started it. As a matter of fact, this is my opinion, Israel was caught unawares. Suddenly, thousands of rockets. They didn't even know what Hamas had accumulated through Iran. So let's understand the facts here. We were attacked. And no one in Washington, D.C., in Paris or London will tell you that if rockets rain down on their capital and were hitting their homes and their families and their children, would they tell them, stand down, don't defend yourself? The people are oppressed over there, really? So we have to understand the facts. Why? Not because we want to sit and debate, but because we have to feel strong with ourselves and know that we are in the right here. We are in the right. And if Netanyahu and Israel backs down now because Hamas needs a break to regroup and get more rockets, what crime is he doing to his people? How is he protecting his people? If we stand down now, means they can just regroup and rebuild and start again in a week or two. Mm-hmm. The only way is to destroy the infrastructure of attacks, of the tax sites. So I wanted to share this because it is appalling to see what's going on and what's being written in the media. And I heard something from Nikki Haley I want to share with you because she's brilliant. She was interviewed by Fox News yesterday. She said, all Biden has to tell the PLO, we are not sending you any more money to use to buy weapons to attack Israel, and they'll back down. She says he doesn't even have to do much because the former administration established policies. That's why in 4 years, by the way, we were never attacked, that you cannot attack Israel. You attack Israel, America is going to pull its support for you. We will not stand by. Now they see America is weak and not supporting Israel. Look what's happening. So we have to bombard our politicians and say, you must stand by your only ally in the Middle East. And by the way, that's why the Abraham Accords were successful, because the Arab countries realized Israel's an ally. They have amazing technology. They have amazing medicine. And they are helping their Arab partners now. So that's the good news. They realize what a powerhouse Israel is as a country. So I want to just share two more points that I wrote down listening to my brother. In 1947, he said something brilliant. The UN suggested, this is, remember, before Israel was established as a state, right? UN suggested a two-state solution. Israel said yes. The Jews said yes, absolutely. The Arabs said absolutely not. Why? Because in their doctrines is Israel's Jews do not have a right to exist. So this is not about, oh, we want peace in our land and you want peace in your land and let's get along, buddies. No. Their indoctrination, their mission statement is that Jews cannot exist in this universe. So how can you argue and make peace with a group of people that the basis of their lives is kill the Jews? So you're not talking about two equal parties who love peace, want peace, pursue peace. You're talking about one party that in their Quran, it says the Jews cannot exist. That's the problem. So it's not, we're not two same decks of cards here. Now, one more beautiful fact. Beautiful not because it's so great, but because listen, so what happened then? In between 1947 and 1949, a few million Jewish refugees, right? What happened to those millions of refugees? They were integrated into countries and into Israel. Arabs, a few million refugees, still refugees. Why? Because the Arab leadership wants them, using them as a weapon to destroy Israel and the Jews. I heard one more little thing I heard that's so angry. Israeli commander calling Gaza, get out of your building quick, we're gonna bomb, because there was Hamas terrorists shooting from that building. The guy says back in Arabic and they translate, no, we cannot leave. But you have children, the Israeli commander says in Arabic. He says, you don't understand. Our children are our weapon. The more children you kill, the better we look.
Yeah.
Now, what does that tell you? If you do not value your own children's life, if you do not value your own family's life, how could you work with people that do not value and using their children as weapons? Nebach. So this is what we are dealing with now. We have to have the information again, not because you and I are going to debate, but because we have to be, we are feeling insecure. When people are attacking us, maybe you're right. Like one Jewish guy wrote on Facebook, I was in shock. He said, I love Israel, but I feel bad. But I also love the Palestinians. I know you love the Palestinians. Do we not like other humanity? It's a mitzvah in the Torah. But that's not the point. We must be strong because our lives are at stake. We are, somebody asked me, what's the example of the canary? Remember in the olden days with the miners, what did they do? Right? If there was a gas or other toxic, they sent it.
We're the canaries.
Right. And if it dies,
you got to get out of there. We're the Jews. If we become the victims of terrorism and hate, who's next? Humanity. If you don't respect the Jews, you don't respect humanity. So it is a chain of terrible effects. When after 9/11, what did we as Jews say? Because they ignored the terrorism in Israel, it came into our shores. You think terrorism only exists in Israel? It exists in the world. And we have to stem it. It's like, I hate to use the word, it's a cancer. Why do the doctors cut out sometimes healthy organs and tissue? Because if not, the cancer will kill the body. You have to sometimes, yes, there's casualties of war. Israel tries not to, but they have to. Over 3,000 rockets? You understand what's going on here? So now we understand. So again, what's our reaction? Because I don't want to make the class, well, really we could talk about this for hours. Our reaction has to be strengthen ourselves. Know that we are united with our brothers and sisters in Israel. It's not them and us, it's we. To strengthen our Torah, our mitzvahs, our connection to Hashem. Because who's protecting Israel? It's God. God is protecting Israel. And we have to show our unity. It is unity that all through the ages, look, it is the unity that brought the miracles, Purim, Hanukkah. Anywhere you see a miracle happen, it's because the Jews were united as one with each other. So yeah, you and I are not exactly grabbing a gun and running to Gaza to fight the war. What are we doing? We're using spiritual ammunition, godly ammunition. We have to fight the war of strengthening ourselves. Torah, mitzvahs, acts of kindness, acts of love, more tzedakah, more prayer, lighting our Shabbos candles. Anything we do, any mitzvah helps the land of Israel, helps our brethren, the Holy Land, Eretz Yisrael. At the end
And
of it,
writing and the pen, writing to all of our officials.
yes, you need, like Queen Esther, she went to Achashverosh, but then there was a 3-day fast and prayer. They gathered the children, but they also did diplomacy. We need both, of course, hand in hand. Does anybody want to add anything to strengthen ourselves as we move forward in the class?
I'd like to add that the European countries have been silent pretty much because they are afraid, because they have so many Arabs, Muslims living in their countries. So they've been silent about this story where they support Israel, but they're afraid to say it because of their country's inhabitants by the Muslims.
That's true. That's true. I have a friend who lives in Paris, and he's afraid to even hang a mezuzah for fear of drawing attention that it's a Jewish home.
So there you are. So we don't even have Europe who says, what are you doing? Israel has a right to defend itself. So it's us.
Yes, that's what happened. Now imagine if America, when they fought Germany by the Holocaust, would have said, well, we need a ceasefire. You know, you have to look at it also that way. We cannot have a ceasefire. We have to wipe out the Nazis. You can't now make a ceasefire. Oh,
we
yeah,
also have to, they're running out of missiles for the Iron Dome.
Yes.
So we really have to deliver. And it won't be the government, it'll have to be Congress. But that's close.
We have to, yes. We have to fight for our people. This is a very, very dangerous precedence. They're testing America. There's a lot going on that nobody realizes. They are testing America. If America sides with the PLO, it's a green light to keep going. Wipe out, God forbid, the Jews. Because that's what they want. It's no other than another Holocaust. 7 million Jews living in Israel, 6 million killed by the Germans. This is chas v'shalom, this is what they want. Another Holocaust. I bet all of us were saying, why didn't anybody speak up during Nazis? This is the same thing. Why are we not all speaking? And this is not an attack. But we all said, why didn't we do anything then? Why are we doing anything now? It's the same thing. It's not, they're not taking us into concentration camps, chas v'shalom, but what? Shooting rockets at 7 million Jews is what? Chopped liver, you know what I mean? So hopefully our Torah study today, God will see how the Jews are banding together, and God will step in and give a complete victory and peace in the land of Israel and destroy our enemies.
Amen.
That's what has to be done. They have to be wiped out, the enemies. And that's what Netanyahu is trying to do. The tunnels, they're shooting rockets from their wives' homes, from their children's homes, and maybe even from their nursery schools, knowing them. They don't care. Anywhere to protect their stand. And they attacked Israel for being brilliant in their military strategy and say they were going in. In the meantime, they bombed the tunnels. Brilliant. They're attacking them for doing a Trojan horse. Why? This is a war, ladies and gentlemen. What are we playing games here? This is war. They're saving lives. Oh, you attack. They didn't give the media the real report. Well, Baruch Hashem, they didn't. Go Israel. Go the Jewish people. Am Yisrael Chai. That's all I could say.
Hi.
Am Yisrael Chai. Baruch Hashem. So they should be in Tzachon and peace in Eretz Yisrael. The end of class will say a psalm together. And the gates of heaven should open and protect our people, and Israel has to remain strong and not back down. We back down every time and to our own detriment. That's it. We're a people of compassion. That's the story, which really beautifully ties in with this week's Torah portion of Naso, which last week we spoke about counting. God counts the Jewish people in the Torah portion of Bamidbar, previous Torah portion, to show his love. Naso is a continuing of the counting. Naso means to count. So the commentaries ask a very interesting question. There's so many other Hebrew words that mean counting. Lifkod, I wrote them down. Lifkod, limnot, lispar, lachshov. Why use the word naso, which means to lift up? Who would like to respond to that question? Why is counting using the Hebrew word naso, which means lift? That's why a leader of the Jewish people was called the Nasi. Now, Nasi Hadar, the leader of the generation. What's
to round everybody together so that the more people that are together helps lift everybody up?
Beautiful, beautiful, yes. The Nasi Hadar, why is a leader of the Jewish people called Nasi? Could be called Rosh HaMemshalah, head of the nation, could be called Melech King, could be called Rebbe, Rabbi, Nasi. Nasi Hadar means lift up the generation. The job of true leadership is to lift up your people, not to make them sheep or followers. Like they write, what's the sign of a leader? Someone who makes leaders, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Every one of his emissaries is a leader, not a follower, a leader. I was applying for a grant for Circle of Friends, and I said, we have 150 teen volunteers. I said, but teen leaders of friendship and inclusion, we're empowering youth. We're turning them into leaders. So counting, God wants each of us to be lifted up. And when you are lifted up, and you don't look at yourself, I'm part of the herd. I'm one in a million. What do I matter? What do I count? Who even notices me in the crowd? I'm lost in the crowd, people like to say. The teacher doesn't even know I exist, many students say. I'm one in a million, people say. Who cares if I, in my little corner of the universe, drill a hole? Who will notice? Naso, uplift, God is telling us something so pivotal, how you look at yourself. You have to look at yourself that you're a Naso, you're lifted up. You're not one in a million. You're the only one in a million. That's what God is telling us. A fundamental principle also in education. Why children feel low self-esteem, they don't feel they matter. Who cares about me? I don't matter, I don't count. Who notices me? So the most successful teachers make every student feel like you're the best, you're the smartest. Of course we need you in the class. You add so much to our class, and children also. One of my children said to me the other day, it made me cry. She said, Ma, I was one of 11, like who cared about me? And I'm like, oy vey. You know what I mean? It hurts when you hear that. So that's what God is telling us. You matter. You're not here by coincidence, by accident. You are uplifted. You matter. I am counting you. I am uplifting you, God says. So there's a beautiful thing. One of the Rebbe said that you have to have two notes in your pocket. One note has to say, B'shrili nivra ha'olam, famous passage. For me, the world was created. For my sake, God put me in the world for a purpose. I have a unique mission and purpose. And in the other pocket, you have to put a note, I am but dust and ashes. Why? So you shouldn't become arrogant. It seems like a contradiction, but really not. You matter. You have a unique mission and purpose. And God created the world for you. Do you know that? However, also realize, don't get too haughty, don't get too arrogant. Because after all, we do come from the earth. So you have to have two notes in your pocket. When you're feeling down and out, take out the note that says, God created me for a reason. And when you're feeling like you are a self-made man or woman, take out the note that says, really, I'm dust and ashes. I'm great, but not that great. And now comes another beautiful point in the counting, that God is also saying it's not only matters how you view yourself, is how you view others. The counting, the uplifting is you're uplifted, but remember, so is everybody else. And that's why in Ethics of a Father, Ben Zoma writes, who is honored? One who honors others. Who is uplifted? One who uplifts others. You know, there's always the people who put everyone down. Her, him, not so smart. Who does she think she is? Because they have low self-esteem. But if you're a person that knows how to compliment and lift up others, you are uplifted. It doesn't, I said to somebody, you know, I said to someone, oh, you look very tired. She says, yeah, the kids are driving me crazy, but I only have 2 kids, you have 11. I said, it doesn't matter. I don't have a monopoly on being tired and overworked. We could both be overworked. If you're overworked, doesn't take away from me being overworked. If you're brilliant, doesn't mean I'm not brilliant. We could both be brilliant. So sometimes we make a mistake thinking that someone else is uplifted, it takes away from our glory. It doesn't. The Torah is saying, you want to have honor, honor others. You want to be uplifted, uplift others. So there's a dual message in the counting. God uplifts us, he counts us, counting using the word uplifting. And the second thing is teaching us how to view others in an honorable way. And if we honor others, we'll honor ourselves, which is interesting because if you respect other people's lives, your life is respectable. If you have no value for other people's life, you don't value your own life. You could blow yourself up. What prevents you? You don't value life. So this is just a thought that came to me. It's the way we view things is a chain of events. What do you think? You know what I mean? And also, you know, when are people angry and resentful and lash out at others when they're feeling bad about themselves? Like my kids.
Bullies. It's like why bullies are bullies.
Yeah.
They don't feel good about themselves.
Or like I was in a bad mood. My kids said, everyone head for the hills. Mommy's in a bad mood. Exactly. Our mood, how we deal with our families is because something happened to us. You know, when you slam the pot down, it's not because your kid did something, it's because you did something. Ma, what did I do? Nothing. Bam. So this is another, I think, a beautiful insight into the counting, that we are as important, basically, as we make other people feel. That's really the underlying statement of the counting. And that's what God, you know, also the way God approaches us is how we have to approach everyone else. It's kind of a lesson, a prototype, you know? Mm-hmm. So like God is showing us, how should we deal with people? Uplift them, Naso, count them, uplift them. Another very, very nice thing. So now let's go into the pasuk. There's a very, very fascinating thing that happens. And I'm going to talk about something that I saw that I thought was so beautiful, how I call it the politics of envy. Because as we discuss now the different jobs of the Jewish people, how could you not be a little envious? Think about it. Moshe, leader of the Jewish people, humblest of all men, his older brother, the high priest, his older brother's sons, priests, the tribe of Levi. The other side of the family has the Levites who work in the temple, and we'll discuss their jobs. How could you not feel like a little left out? I'm an Israelite. I'm a plain Jane. Not I work in the temple. Not I'm Moses. I mean, I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit left out, perhaps. So in a little while, we're going to see how does Moses deal with envy. Jealousy is like a natural emotion. It's hard sometimes not to be jealous. You know, sometimes you walk into someone's house, you go, wow, like, oh. And then you come to my little kitchen, I'm like, That lady has one child and 6 ovens. Is it fair? So sometimes you can't help being a little envious. Why not, you know? So you know the story. A woman is walking with her husband, the mayor, and they pass a construction site, and she calls out, "Joe, Joe!" The guy comes down in his hard hat, and they have a whole intimate conversation. And the mayor says to her, "Honey, see, aren't you glad you married me instead of him? Look, you know, in other words, you're the wife of me." She says, "No, darling, if I would have married him, he would have been the mayor and you would have been."
I need a good, strong Jewish woman for my son, Adam.
For sure.
So now going back, so now in this Torah portion, the counting is broken down to the different tribes. So now let's see how God counts the tribe of Levi. Very, very interesting insight. So God says like this. So there were 3 sons of Levi that were the Levites who worked in the temple: Kahas, Gershon, and Merari. Kahas means gathering. Gershon means expulsion. And Merari actually means bitterness or frustration. These are the 3 sons of Levi. They were given the jobs of the Levites in the temple. So what was the job of the oldest? And then I want to go to the passages. In charge of carrying. Now remember, a little background. Remember they build the traveling tabernacle, the Mishkan in the desert, right?
Yep.
And every time they came to a spot, they took it apart and put it together. So when they came to a encampment, they built the tabernacle. They went to the next place, they took it apart, boom, they traveled. So the tabernacle was a collapsible temple, collapsible base Hamikdash. It was called the Mishkan. Now, who carried all the items? There's a lot of packing and moving going on. So there were designated jobs, and the Levites were designated with carrying the pieces of the tabernacle. And it's very important to see who got what job. Okay, very organized here. Reminds me of my chart. Before Pesach, I have a chart of jobs. Peel the maror and grind the maror. Make the charosis and peel the nuts. Vacuum, fold the laundry, and everything. Everybody signs up for jobs, and that's how you do it. And they have the jobs. So here, God says they have to be given jobs. Here's the assigned jobs. Okay, so the oldest son, Kahas, carried all the very valuable utensils, the ark, which had the luchot, the broken ones and the good ones, the new ones, the menorah, the table, the shulchan that held the 12 challahs, the altars, the mizbeach, and all the fancy utensils and not so fancy utensils. The family of Gershon, they carried the coverings and the curtains. And Merari was responsible to carry the planks, the bars, the pillars, and the sockets of the tabernacle structure. So the foundation, you know, like a tent, you put up the foundation, then you hang the curtains, and then you bring in the utensils. Okay, so now we know everybody's job. Now let's read the passages. God says to Moshe, count. Now we're going to count the Kahas. Naso is Rosh B'nai Kahas, Mitoich B'nai Levi, L'mishpachasam, L'beis Avaisam. Make a count of the sons of Kahas from among the children of Levi by their families according to their fathers' houses. Notice the terminology, Naso. Count them, uplift them, right? Now let's see how he says about Gershon. Very important. Now Gershon, take a census, using the word Naso, of the sons of Gershon, of them too, following their fathers' houses according to their families. So there's a problem here. What do you mean of them too? Is Gershon an afterthought? Count Kahas. Beautiful. Oh, by the way, count Gershon too. Is the second child less important than the first child? What do you mean count them too? Oh yeah, by the way, don't leave them out. Don't forget to count them too, God says to Moshe. Sounds a little bit like, let's see what's going on. Now let's get to the third. Now the third is the biggest problem with Merari. He says, "B'nei Merari l'mishpachaisam lebeis avaisam tivkaidaisam." He doesn't even use the word Naso. He uses a different word for counting. For the sons of Merari, you shall count them by their families according to their fathers' houses. Are they not uplifted? At least by Gershon, it uses the word uplifted. By Kahas, of course, it uses the word. By Merari, it doesn't even say they're uplifted. And the question is, are they not uplifted? Are they not as important or as chashiv or as respectable or as lifted as the two other brothers, families? It's very perplexing here, right? So let's look. Kahas, it says count them. Sounds beautiful. Gershon, count them. Oh, by the way, them too. Don't forget to count. And by Merari, it doesn't even say the word uplift them, count them, uplift them. It says tifkoi daisam, count them. So you know that in the Torah, it's never only about what is written, the Peshat. It's never only about the literal explanation. The Chassam Sofer has a brilliant insight about what's going on here, because we know that the lessons in the Torah are for eternity. This is obviously not only talking about counting them. Yes, we're counting them, but it's also talking about our future. It's talking about two things here. First, we're going to go into the historical connection and psychological insight. And then we're going to go even deeper into the Freudian aspect, the psychological understanding of what it's telling us here. And this is also related to what they're carrying. The passages that count them also relate to what they're carrying. Kahas is carrying, let's review, the very important part of the tabernacle, right? The ark, the menorah, the shulchan, the gold and the silver utensils, very important items. Gershon, also important, the curtains, the drapings. Kahas, the foundation, the poles, the sockets. And then we also have the meanings of their names, remember? Kahas means gathering. Gershon means expulsion. Merari means bitterness and frustration. So both their names, their jobs, and the way they're counted is indicative of something deeper and something historical perspective and also psychological perspective in our lives. So who wants to garner a little guess of what the Torah is telling us here? Now that we know what every person, every family's job was, how they're counted, and what their names mean. Anybody want to share a little bit insight into this?
We're all part of a whole. Everyone has a part.
Okay, very good. Everyone has a job, Diane, you're saying. Yeah.
But unlike here and now, I mean, in the United States, presumably, no one can change. No one can grow into the other job. It's like a caste. Once you're assigned something, then that's what you do. Correct?
Do you feel like it's a little discrimination? Which is what I was going to talk about soon, envy. Why am I not a Kohen? That's what Korach said. Soon, later on, we're going to read about the big conflict that Moses has with Korach, you know, as Caesar has with Brutus. But we can't leave Shakespeare out of this. So the Torah is not only talking about the story of what happened, which is what happened, it's also talking about something in the future, the historical future of the Jewish people. Let's see what happens. So kahas means gathering. Gathering. When were the Jewish people gathered together? In the land of Israel. We came to the land of Israel. We were gathered together. We had a Beit HaMikdash. We were united with each other. We were united with God. There was perfection. It was Camelot. Everything was beautiful. God spoke to us through the 12 stones. We had harmony, unity, prosperity in the land of Israel. Gathering, kahas. So the Jewish people's history started off in the land of Israel with unity and peace and love and harmony. Now what happens? What's phase 2 in our history? The Jews begin to rebel. They begin to worship idolatry. They begin to fight with the prophets and the kings and the leaders. And there is the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Beis HaMikdash 1, Beis HaMikdash 2. And we are exiled. We are exiled. We're in the Gershon phrase. What's the Gershon phrase? Expulsion. Gershon means to be expelled. What's now for expel?
Expelled.
Expelled. Sorry. Thank you.
That's good.
But we're still a Jewish people. We're in the shtetls. We have our synagogues. We have our rabbis. We have our rebbes. We have our gedolim. The Talmud Bavli, the Talmud Yerushalmi. So though we don't have the perfection of the Kahas era, we still have a form of unity. We're still a Jewish people. We're still uplifted. Then comes the third phase in our history, the Holocaust. Merari, bitterness. The bitterness comes into our lives. We are murdered, cremated, killed, attacked, wiped out practically. So the three families are indicative of the three phases of Jewish history that are to come. The phase of Kahas, gathering, the phase of Gershon, expulsion, and the phase of bitterness, Merari. Which brings us now why Merari is using the word tafkid, to count, but not uplifted. How do we understand this? Because the Jews of the Holocaust who survived and the next generation didn't need to be uplifted. They were already uplifted by the fact of what they went through. They were already considered the greatest of the great by the sacrifice and the pain and the suffering they went through. So the Torah is telling that generation, the Merari generation, doesn't have to be uplifted. They're already uplifted. The pain and the suffering they went through put them on a level of the Kedoshim, the holiest of our people. When the Satmar Rebbe, one of the Hasidic dynasties, was in America, he was giving blessings. People came, a holy Rebbe like the Satmar. But then he had to go back to Israel. That's where he was settled. So his disciples cried, Rebbe, who's going to bless us? Who's going to protect us? Who's going to bench us? And he said to them the following: any Jew, find any Jew who has a tattoo on their arm, and they can bless you. Because they are the tzaddikim, they are the righteous, they are the holy of our generation. You don't need me. Find any Jew that has a tattoo, he or she can bless you better than I, because they're already uplifted. The Torah doesn't have to designate it as the uplifted ones because they are uplifted by the very virtue of what they went through. An interesting story. There was a Jewish man. He writes this story about himself. He didn't grow up with any Judaism. He was in the Navy, and you know what they do in the Navy? They tattoo. He was tattooed from head to toe as a young man. He left the Navy, and lo and behold, he ends up in a Chabad house. You know it. A couple of years later, he's now a religious Jew, a pious Jew, a yarmulke, tzitzis, a big beard, a pot belly from all the cholent. That's a joke. And, you know, Hasidic Jews, before Shabbos, they go to the mikveh, the men's mikveh pool immersion. People go before services in the morning, before your morning prayers, and so on. But what did he do? His whole body was tattooed, not always with the nicest diagrams and pictures. He was embarrassed. So he would either go like 4 in the morning so no one could see him, or at a time when no one else was in the mikveh. He didn't want other men to see how his body was tattooed from head to toe. He goes one day, no one is around, but he slips and he falls. So all the men who were coming in see a guy, and they all like saw him, and he was humiliated. There he is lying, undressed, and everyone now sees his tattoos, what he's been trying to hide. So there was an elderly man there. He said to him, "Komm her, mein Freund. Come here, my friend," he says. "With my tattoo," he shows him his number, "and your tattoo, together we will immerse in the mikveh. Because you are like me, an uplifted Jew. We both will go into the mikveh together." So this is the generation of Merari, of the bitterness that the Torah is talking about. 3 generations. 3 generations. The Kahas, the Merari, the Kahas, the Gershon, and the Merari. Kahas and Merari. So now let's go a little bit in. Anybody want to add anything? Someone's at my door. Give me 1 second. I apologize. Oh, you want to do this? Oh, come on. Sorry. So anybody want to share anything? Any insight or comments? So this is what the Torah is talking about, alluding to. The future lives of Klal Yisrael, the future lives of Klal Yisrael. Then I saw something beautiful I want to share. So now let's dig into the Freudian aspect a little bit. So Kahas, harmony, Gershon, frustration or expulsion, Merari, frustration, bitterness, talks about also how we are in our lives. At times, there's a harmony within us. Everything works together. We feel connected to our soul. We feel happy. We feel we have clarity in our lives, where we want to go, where we want to be. We're kahas, we're in a kahas stage. We're harmonious. Then at times we feel frustration. We feel frustration. So frustration means we don't feel the harmony. We have internal forces working against us. Do this, do that. We have to fight it because it's not always a positive thing. It's not always a good force. It's not always a positive, positive energy.
Influence.
Positive influence. Very good. Thank you, Margaret. So we're fighting. We fight it, but it's there. There's a disharmony within ourselves to do things that we shouldn't really be doing, or acting certain ways we shouldn't be acting. And then lastly, you have a time in your life where you have absolute frustration. You're just totally not what you should be. You're totally not where you could be or should be or can be. That's it, and you have to get back to it. You have to get back at least to the Gershon or to the level of Kahas. So the Torah is also talking about 3 psyches within ourselves. What's happening internally with ourselves? And you see it very much with what the vessels they're carrying. When we're in harmony, it's with the gold and the silver, the ark, the menorah, the candelabra, everything is beautiful. The utensils are shining. And when Murray, remember we said he carried the boards and the sockets that held the planks and the pillars. Sometimes those things the foundation is crumbling, they're uprooted. And until we settle our foundation, so to speak, and go back to basics, and sometimes peel away the layers, we can't come to the Gersh Kahas. We're at the Merari stage in our lives. Our foundation is not settled. When your foundation is not settled, you're not settled. So the Torah is also sharing with us, everyone has a stage in their lives they go through. Sometimes it could be all at once, in 1 year. Sometimes it's different years, different times, different situations that challenge us. So this is also perhaps an insight into the 3 families, 3 stages of history, but also 3 personal stages in our lives. Because as we spoke many times, Hasidus, Kabbalah explains that each of us is a microcosm of the universe. We have the global picture, and then we have the historical picture, and then we have the internal picture, what's happening in us, what's happening with our surrounding, our people, and what's happening in the world. And what's happening with us is really a microcosm of what's happening in the world. That's why I said last week, I shared a story, a student wrote to the Rebbe during one of the wars, I think Yom Kippur War, what can I do? I can't exactly enlist into the army. How can I do something for Israel? I'm feeling so frustrated. The Rebbe said, strengthen your own borders. You can't fight on Israel's borders, but you could strengthen your own borders. In other words, we are a microcosm of the universe. If every one of us strengthens ourselves, fortifies ourselves, builds ourselves, then it's a ripple effect that will transform ourselves, our families, our communities, our world, slowly but surely. I think this is also an insight into what the Torah is telling us with the counting. Be counted. So does anybody want to add anything, say anything, complain, argue, negate?
I had a boss once who used to say, better to let people think you know nothing instead of opening your mouth and confirming the doubt. So
very good. I love it. I love that. I love that. I love that. Beautiful.
I'm afraid to say something with all this wisdom and insight. It's just so magical. What can I say? I mean, I like strengthening our own borders because I feel so small, like helpless. How can I help Israel? I write letters. What else can I do? So that's a good place to start.
And also feel confident that we are doing the right thing. Let's not be apologetic.
No.
That's very important.
Yeah.
Don't be apologetic when you do something wrong, but don't be apologetic when you do something right. I'm sorry. And what are you sorry for? Defending ourselves. Why are you sorry? That you're not allowing children and mothers and fathers to be shot out in Yerushalayim, in Haifa, in Tel Aviv, in Gush, Which brings me to a beautiful conclusion to the class today, is that in this Torah portion, we read about how the Kohen blesses the Jewish people. One of their jobs, right? It's so funny, such a beautiful story. So it was very miraculous that our shul, this Yontif, for some reason, every minyan was full at night and by day. We're packed with Jews. Sunday night, my husband and I couldn't believe how many people came to shul. Maybe it was the Southern fried chicken with the kugel, I'm not sure, or maybe they came to pray, give them the benefit of the doubt. And then Monday we were packed for the 10 Commandments and the cheesecakes. I can't begin to tell you about those cheesecakes. Monday night, packed. Jews came, and Tuesday for Yizkor. So there's a guy who started to come to shul, and we found that he's a Kohen. So we said, my husband goes over to him and says, Mr. Katz, because he's a Katz, last name Katz is a Kohen. Can you come on Monday and Tuesday and bless us? He says, Tuesday for sure. My husband says, why Tuesday for sure? He says, because I promised my father when he died that I would never miss Yizkor. Now, I was like, wow, an American Jew promised his father, and he's no youngster. He's already in his 70s. His father, years ago, he promised his father he'll never miss Yizkor. And what does that tell you about our people? Isn't that amazing? Amazing. So he blessed us. So let me just quickly say, so when the Kohen on holidays and, by the Sephardic communities, they bless the Jews every day. They do Birchat Kohanim every day. So, they split their fingers like Spock in Star Trek. You're a Bas Kohen? Anybody here from a family of Kohanim? And they cover themselves with the talis. They go up on the stage. They take off their shoes. So I always tell my son-in-law, as a Kohen, make sure you never have little holes in your socks. So they go up. Now, why do they cover themselves with the talis? Because the Torah tells us that God comes down and rests on their palms as they stretch out their palms to bless the Jewish people. God is there. They are a conduit for the blessing. They're saying the words, but really God blessing us. It's beautiful. So why the palms? Because to show how the palm of my hand, so to speak. God is embracing us in the palm of his hand. So God's presence resting on their hand, so they cover over. You're not supposed to see God. So that's why my husband always announces, everybody go under your talit, and the women look down into their siddur. You don't look directly at a Kohen. There was a thing I read that if you look directly at the Kohen's hands, it could blind you. The godly presence could be blinding. They don't look at the Kohen. And how do they start off? And I'm going to end with this beautiful, beautiful concept. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, levarech es Ama Yisrael. Who can say the last word? Ba'ahava, love. I will bless the Jewish people with love. Now, let me ask you, we discussed this a few times. How could God command them to bless the Jewish people? Okay, it's a mitzvah. The Kohen, it's a mitzvah for them to bless. But how could God command them to love? It's an emotion. You could tell someone, give tzedakah. You could tell someone, light a candle, put on tefillin, eat kosher, keep Shabbos, but it doesn't involve emotion. You may not even like doing it. But how could you tell a person, you know what, Mr. Cohen, bless the Jewish people, but ahava, with love, and make sure you feel love. And I addressed this a few times. How could you command a mitzvah with love? Maybe you could build up to loving everyone, but you know what? Truth in advertising, maybe you don't really love everybody over there.
It should be, because it should be done with intention, with positive, good intention, not just done to be done.
Excellent, very good, very good. So I saw two beautiful insights. One is that because we said that they are just a conduit, it is really God showing the love. It's God has the emotion of the love. So because it's God, it's not really telling the Kayin you have to love, even though we were telling the Kayin. It is God's love emanating from the Kayin. Beautiful, very nice. But now let's go even deeper. Aharon, remember? Moshe's brother, what was he famous for? Love. Oyev Shalom. He loved peace. Roidei Shalom. He ran after peace. Umakarvenes Abrius, and he brought everyone in with love. He was known as the peacemaker. He would say, "Oh, Cynthia, you had a fight with Roberta." Cynthia, Roberta feels terrible. I'm telling you, she wants to make peace. Then went to Roberta. Roberta, Cynthia's crying all day. She really waited. And he'd bring people together. So the DNA of the Kayin, you know how some people have a predisposition to love, to generosity, to kindness. And the rest of us have to work on it. But some people really are born with that DNA of love and compassion. So the Kohanim have the DNA of love. That's why, remember, we discussed a few months ago leprosy. When a Jew slanders or gossips or talks Lashon Hara, who do they go to diagnose the leprosy? The doctor? The rabbi? The Rebbitzin? Who? Margaret, I can't hear you.
Kohanim. The Kohanim.
Why? Because another person, even a rabbi, a Rebbitzin, a scholar might say, oh, him. I don't even have to look at his leprosy. Yeah, you're a leper. I don't particularly care for you. You're definitely a leper. The Kohen, because of his natural disposition of love and compassion, will be objective. Wait, how do you call it? Non-biased, non-prejudice. He'll say the truth. You know, you're not a leper. This is not leprosy. This is something else. Go to the doctor, get some skin lotion. Or he'll say, you know, Taka, yeah, you slandered, you spoke Lashon, yeah, it's leprosy. Now you have to isolate. So the Kohen, because he will not be prejudiced, he will look at you without an agenda. That's why you go to the Kohen. But if, by the way, there's a Kohen that has an agenda and doesn't feel love, they should not bless the people. They're not permitted to bless. They have to stand down. Just you should know. If you do not feel love in your heart, do not bless the Jewish people, the Torah says. Stand down till you can develop love. So now I want to end off with a story. My mother's first cousin has a brother, or whatever. My mother's first cousin was a rav in a shul, a rabbi in a shul, and he noticed that an elderly gentleman always left shul early. So he said, maybe it's my speech. He shortened the speech. He changed his speech. Nothing worked. And he didn't really want to confront the guy. The guy was a Holocaust survivor. He didn't want to say, why do you always leave early? He didn't want to say. But once he invited the guy to his house for a Shabbos meal. So he said to him, Max, just curious, I noticed on Yontif, you always leave shul early. Is it something I said? Is it something I did? He says, no, Rabbi, it's nothing to do with you. I want to tell you a story, he said. When I was in Auschwitz, there was a wonderful man there. He was called the rabbi of the camps. He shared his bread. He showed compassion and love. He was beloved. And they caught him sharing a piece of his bread. So they took us all out. They put him on the little mountain and they put him before the firing squad. You shared your bread, now you're going to pay the penalty. And he said, but can I have one last word? They said, sure. And he was a Kohen, and he spread out his arms on that mountain that day, and he blessed us. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Hashem panav elecha, Yisa Hashem panav. And his words, he said, never left my head. So I can never listen to another Birchat Kohanim, because I feel that if I will ever listen to another Kohen bless me, I will not be able to remember his voice in my head. And I can never give that up, he said. And that's why I leave early, he says, because I cannot be there when another Kohen gets up to bless. Now that's Birchas Kohanim, Ba'ahava. And that is the uplifted Jew who we spoke about before, the Jew that doesn't need uplifting because he is uplifted. So we'll end this, that we should all bless our brethren with love and compassion. But sometimes you cannot have compassion for someone who is shooting rockets at you. The only way is to fight back. Not because you lack love, maybe because you have love. And when you have love, you have to protect that which is beloved, which is your wives, your children. So let us say a prayer now. Which means from the Psalms, who will help us? Almighty God, who has created heaven and earth and gave us the land of Israel as ours, our gift. And it is not a gift that we are giving away to anybody. We have a right, a godly right to our land and to our lives. And that's what we have to focus on. Am Yisrael Chai. So when we light Shabbos candles tomorrow, 18 minutes before sunset, put a few pennies in tzedakah, say a prayer, take on another mitzvah, any mitzvah, visiting the sick, eating kosher, buying kosher, speaking nicely of others, doing a favor to somebody, anything, respecting our elders, anything you do is a step to help our brethren in Israel and the world over. So good Shabbos. If anybody wants to say anything, anybody has anything to